Good morning. I'm Caitlin with Wiregrass Daily News, and I'm here with Mr. Kyle Scott, who is running for District 3 Commissioner seat.
Hey, how you doing today, Caitlin?
Good. Thank you for coming, Kyle. Kyle, let's get going. What do you see as the primary responsibility of a commissioner, and how do you plan to fulfill them?
Um, I believe that the primary role of a commissioner is to be a public servant first and foremost. I believe listening is the most crucial key to the position. Knowing what your constituents want, knowing how it affects them in their day-to-day lives, and importantly, knowing how to deliver on what plans you promise them, so it can increase their quality of life. As far as fulfilling them, I believe it takes involving them in things that happen at the commission. The commission currently meets twice a month, I believe. Um, Never seen any town halls held in different commissions, and I think that something that should be required by all commissioners is hosting at least a monthly, if not bi-weekly, town hall, so that constituents can be up to date on what's happening in the commission, and commissioners can be more in touch with their constituents in regards to what they need in their day to day life.
How do you plan to balance your role as a commissioner with other elected officials and departments?
That is a tricky one. Um, I'd say overall teamwork. I believe that the department heads of their individual departments should come together more often to discuss budgets, to discuss issues that they might foresee, whether it's pricing, whether it's financing, and besides, besides, besides teamwork, I believe that each commissioner should sit down and, especially for my district, it's District 3. So what borders us is District 2. So I think that District 3 and District 2 should take time outside of the commission meetings to discuss things that potentially could impact our um, our districts, whether District 2 implements XYZ or District 3 implements XYZ. We should look at the potential impacts of those projected plans in neighboring districts.
So, what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table that will make you an effective commissioner?
Again, I believe that listening is a very important trait. Creative planning, executing your plans and initiatives, and lastly, I'd say negotiating. Nothing's done without negotiation. I do understand that there are 6 votes in the commission. I believe 6 or 7, if you include the mayor. So I do understand that it's a majority that rules. So I think that being able to work with other commissioners to win their vote in regards to plans and agendas that you have for your district is very important. So I'd say a great trait of mine is actually putting pen to paper and drafting plans of action. So if that means District 3 is a vote short on something that would benefit and uplift the people in District 3, then I would use my personal time to address things that happen in other districts to make sure that that commissioner is on board with what we need in it.
What strategies will you use to ensure transparent and open communication with your constituents?
Um, Strategies to be open and transparent. I'm somebody that wears my heart on my sleeve. So transparency is all I know. I believe that social media should be used. The current incumbent posts probably 3, 4 times a year, if that. I believe there should be a hotline for those that aren't able to access social media. A lot of our district are people over the age of 60. So I don't believe that they are well versed as I am when it comes to using technology such as computers and phones, or smartphones, should I say. I think a 24-hour hotline would help them get their concerns and voice their issues that are ongoing in the district. I also believe that town halls. I grew up in a time where we as a community always had town halls. Um, I believe that Rehoboth or Taylor, I believe they still actually have. So I'd like that mirrored in Dothan. We're a bigger city, and it's something that we should be leading the way on. There's multiple different ways to remain transparent, and it takes effective communication as well as bringing community leaders together. So I have an initiative here that is called the Spirit of Ideas. So this pretty much takes community church leaders, gives them a direct line to me. It also takes it also places surveys and questionnaires within churches. It also is a plan for social media. It's also a plan for a direct, a 24-hour hotline. And the last thing I'd say for accountability and transparency, I think that something such as this, called the Accountability and Confidence Pledge. So this is an agreement between me and constituents, if elected. And whether or not I'm elected, I believe this should be something that everybody across America has towards their elected officials. Any point in time, the constituents can have a petition done. As soon as it hits 200 signatures, they can hit me with a surprise vote of confidence. If they vote 51% or more of no confidence, I immediately vacate my office and pay back the restitution that I've received while in office back to the people. This keeps you transparent and accountable 110%. So I challenge every other candidate and incumbent to sign something such as this.
Yes. How do you plan to involve the community in decision making and ensure that their voices are heard?
That's a good one. Be prepared. I got a lot of initiatives.
Mhm.
So, the Spirit of Ideas, which is what I just showed you, that initiative involves the community in decision making because I believe that we, the people, are the ones that should decide our future and the future of our city. So, currently, when the city of Dothan cares to spend on projects, it's not brought to a public vote. So my initiative is anything that's over $5 million that's going to be spent by the city should go to a public vote. Whether it's something as simple as pickleball stadium, or something such as um, a new water tower. I think that involving the community is is extremely important because it's their money, it's their funds, it's their taxes. We're just stewards and servants of the people. So I understand that a lot of people might not understand what actually goes on in the city, but that's our position to explain it to them so they can understand. So let's say, for example, there's option A that we were trying to do in the city and option B. Well, we'd put the importance of option A, simple terms, and the importance of option B in simple, then would put on the city website, and then the people of the city get to use their reasoning skills and voice their opinion and vote on what they want done first and foremost.
How do you plan to support local economic development and attract new businesses to your area?
Currently, that's done by the Industrial Development Board, and it's also done by the Chamber of Commerce. I believe that we're elected officials. We should be accountable for growth and economic development. I believe that yes, we should have teamwork within other industries and other organizations of our community, but ultimately we represent the people of our community. Thus, it's our responsibility to make sure that what's brought forward to us has been vetted, as well as in the best benefit of our constituents and the people of Dothan. So for me, I believe that all decision making should be a community effort. As far as parenting goes, I think that, me and my wife say in our household, we rule, but I don't think that translates into the public sector. I think in the public sector, a lot of politicians nowadays forget that they're public servants. And a servant brings what? Water to the person they're serving, or food, or et cetera, et cetera, even mail. I believe that my position is to hear what the development board has to say or the chamber has to say and present it to constituents and have them voice their opinions and concerns to then implement plans of action. So I'm all for working with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm all for working with the development board, but from my understanding now, I believe that it falls down to one official, and that official's unelected. That's not Dem- that's not democratic at all.
What steps will you take to ensure that taxpayer dollars are spent efficiently and responsibly?
I think I touched on that earlier. I believe that during the Spirit of Ideas, an initiative that requires all spends by the city over $5 million be voted on by the general population. I think that makes us very effective and responsible because it leaves the major decision making into the people's hands. Um, our role again is to be public servants. We're to research, we're to draft ideas, draft proposals, gather the numbers, analyze the data. But as far as making that ultimate decision, I think it's very dangerous for six people or seven people at the commission to decide the futures of almost 80,000 people in the city. I think that it's time for us to stop babysitting our citizens and actually treat our citizens as equal and give them the right to voice their opinion through a democratic vote.
How do you plan to address any budgetary challenges and prioritize spending on essential services?
I think we need stricter meeting guidelines. Um, City of Dothan every year, the the waste fund, believe it's called Solid Waste Fund, starts out in the and throughout the year they dip into the general funds in order to cover that. Well, my district, you have a sitting CPA. So I believe that that should not be going on, especially when my district has a certified public accountant. So it just shows that people aren't taking their job seriously. Um, None of us here in the city, I don't believe. I mean, some people might, but none of us start the year out saying, you know what, our bank account's overdrawn. Let me just dip into my sisters or my brothers. It's not how it works. So for the city to operate that way, very appalling. I think there needs to be stricter meeting guidelines and requirements so that when we start out, we're always starting out on a positive footing. We're not trying to catch up as the year goes.
What are your priorities for improving infrastructure within your district?
Most commissioners can't be everywhere at once, and most people can't be everywhere at once. But what we can do is effectively listen and effectively have channels for our constituents that are the eyes and ears of our district to voice their concerns. So just through this campaign, I decided to campaign and speak to different pastors, different people, different demographics, different age groups. And I stumbled across a current police officer and the pastor of Bethel Baptist Church, which is Dr. Ricky Plummer, I believe. And I was informed that East Cottonwood Road or Cottonwood Road in East Saunders, there's an accident that happens there twice monthly. It's a very dangerous intersection.
Mhm.
I was informed that they've brought it up multiple times over multiple years to the commission, and nothing's been done. Um, so I believe that effective listening skills, writing down people's concerns, and spending time to actually talk to people. I'm not in the position. I don't believe that the position of commissioner should be to dictate to your constituents what you're willing to do and not willing to do. Your job's to listen to your constituents, write down their concerns, comments, investigate. So I've taken pictures of this, and then also, write plans of action. So I've noticed is since I've taken the time to listen, there's a car counter out there now counting how many cars come past. So I suspect that that problem will be solved.
How do you plan to ensure that public services like police, fire, healthcare, etc., are accessible, efficient, and adequately funded?
I believe that, or let me get into that. So in school, we had a report card system and progress reports. So I think that's something that can address shortfalls that we have, whether it's in policing or EMS or firefighting. Um, a report card system that addresses dispatch times, um, dispatch problems, and things that the police, EMS, and fire encounter while they're being dispatched. I believe that should be done in all districts as a whole, and that funnel should come to city leadership. And where it gets to city leadership, it should get to like the fire marshal and the chief of police. And from there, those pipelines should lead to us. So we know what resources they need and where to allocate our budget and funding for the shortfalls that happen within those services.
What is your plan to improve public safety in the district while ensuring equal treatment of all residents?
So, data, data, data. Numbers don't have emotions and they can't lie to you unless the person inputting them has manipulated them. So I believe in raw data. And by raw data, I mean having ways for constituents and members of the public to input their concerns. A lot of crime goes unanswered in the sense that some people might fear, getting someone in trouble, or they might fear that they're them contacting the police might not solve their issue. I believe that there should be revenue, it's not revenue, but streams and channels for individuals to voice what they have going on in their lives or in their district. So I think that a hotline would be something that's great. Um, Maybe a text app. Something as simple as you're driving somewhere, you see something that is being committed that looks like a crime to you, then maybe an app where you pull over and just drop a pinpoint. Maybe, okay, if that place has 20 pinpoints, I think 20 different, anonymously, if 20 different people have dropped a pinpoint at that location, then that data now goes back to the police station, police department, and something to investigate. Things like that. And I think another thing is we as a community sometimes are a bit too harsh on the police. My father was a deputy for 15 years in Polk County, and like everything in life, you have the good and the bad. Um, Being a police officer is the only profession where you're under constant scrutiny, and they're a reactionary force. They're not mind readers. They're a reactionary force to the society that unfortunately we have built. It all starts at home. I have a son. He was born, he's a blank slate, didn't know how to raise his head, didn't know, he still doesn't, he's still not potty trained, he's two. He's a blank slate. Um, at one stage, I slipped up and said the S word, and he started mimicking. After that, we had a cuss jar in the house. And so far, it's been empty. So in that moment, I realized that those that we see as an adult were all born as a blank slate. Somewhere, somehow, their environment or their parents or lack thereof parents created a situation where they might be hardened criminals. I do believe in justice. I do believe in the rule of law, but I also have to understand that, you know, we are upset with the police with the levels of violence that are continue to rise in Dothan, but more so a reflection as us as a society. I'm grateful that for every man and woman that's in law enforcement that puts their life on the line. I created an initiative called the Deputy Maddox Initiative because I was going to the courthouse for some paperwork, and there was a lady that was irate leaving the courthouse, and she struck Deputy Maddox, who's Houston County Sheriff's Office, twice. I got in between them, got her to the ground. He got her to the ground. I stepped out because that's not my role. Um, he did incredible police work. Picked her up, put her in the corner, let her talk for about 10 minutes. She had voiced that she had just lost custody to her kids. He squatted to her level, listened. I listened. There's about 9 other deputies there. And I explained to her, I said, listen, going to jail. You struck a law enforcement official. He stood her up, brought her in the courthouse and said, hey, look at my phone. During that time, his daughter was going through something at school. She looked at the phone. He's like, I understand what it is to be a parent. and I couldn't imagine my kids. He's like, I'm not going to press charges today. I'm going to get you mental help, and I'm going to figure out how to find you a better job, find you employment. And I was so inspired that when I went home, I wrote an initiative and named after it. I dropped that off to Deputy Carlisle over at Houston County Sheriff's Office and to the County Commission office because great police work needs to be highlighted. It's easy for us to get on the police for doing a bad job, but that's maybe 1 in 1,000. The other 999 times, they do incredible police work. We should highlight that. So that's an initiative that I put together, and I hope that that um, cultivates ensuring that our safety and our needs are kept as a society. Because it's a tough job being an officer.
What measures will you take to ensure the safety and well being of vulnerable populations in the community?
Um, it ties back into a hotline idea initiative that I have, as well as funds for wellness checks. In my neighborhood, Clovedale, big percentage of the population are retired. Um, you find more often than it should be that people have passed away and no one's known for quite some time. I believe that wellness checks should be something to ensure that elderly in our communities are checked upon. Um, Also, 1 in 3 children live in poverty, and 1 in 10 senior citizens live in poverty. So I believe that these things should be addressed because it's creates a level of inadequate inadequate safety, and by that I mean that I've knocked a door while campaigning, and the lady that answered it just didn't have the strength to hold herself up to the door. I asked her what was going on, and she said that she had skipped a meal. Grandma lives by herself. Broke my heart. I went and I took her some groceries. So until really digging deep into the data, I was unaware that we had 1 in 3 children living in poverty and 1 in 10 senior citizens living in poverty. So I truly believe that wellness checks and maybe you know, an anonymous way for those people that are vulnerable to get their message across and their concern across would do great in our community. So, yeah.
How will you address environmental sustainability within your role as an associate commissioner?
That again, when you knock these doors and speak to different constituents in your district, you learn a lot. So, environmental sustainability is important to me. At one stage in my life, me and my wife were farmers, and it's involving the community. It's involving the people of Dothan. A lot of people don't know. I got an initiative for
Another
this.
initiative?
Yes, ma'am. It's a community garden initiative. This was inspired by Christ International Church, where the Delvecchios are pastors.
Mhm.
They informed me that in 2022, they won a Supreme Court decision against the city of Alabama in regards to trying to expand the landfill. The city didn't adequately let its citizens know that that was what they were attempting to do. And thank God for the Delvecchios because they were able to stop the expansion. Um, that inspired this community garden initiative, which would take 1% of the tax revenue we have. It fund 30 organizations to have community gardens. These community gardens would be green spaces to help honeybees thrive and pollinate. It create a resistance to food inequalities for the elderly or for those children that are in poverty, and it just brings a community together. The average age of an American farmer is 60 years old. If another COVID happens, we are all screwed, for lack of a better term. So I think it's important to have the city fund programs that tackle um tackle, poverty as far as kids going to bed hungry or the elderly going to bed hungry because they're on set incomes from Social Security office. So I think it's a good way, again, to foster community and create positive impacts and change. And since it's gardening, it's green and sustainable. So that's an initiative I have as well.
What steps will you take to address climate change, manage waste, and protect natural resources within your district?
I believe that that can be done through internal reporting from specific departments, such as the our water department or our utility department overall, as well as third party auditing. Call me crazy. I do trust government, but at the same time, knowing that you know we as a government tried to sneak through the landfill expansion, which the Supreme Court deemed legal. I'd like third party reporting to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's like parenting. Once you lose your parents' trust, it's hard to earn back. And you earn it back through what? Regaining that trust. So I think regaining that trust would be third party reporting and auditing of what sustainable things the commission brings forward to make sure that it meets those requirements.
What are your plans for supporting education in the district, especially for underfunded schools and communities?
Um, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. The city of Dothan spends about $4 million a year on education and spent 6.4 million on pickleball. What does that say as us as a society? Pickleball is more important than educating our kids. When we die, who's gonna be in charge? Our kids. Uneducated kids think that, the violence is on the rise now. Where would it be 5, 10, 20 years from now? I think that a lot of commissioners say it's not their wheelhouse because the school board has their own elected officials, which is true. However, we decide the funding that the school board gets. So I think we shouldn't put our hands up to say it's not our problem. I believe that we should sit down with teachers. We have an entire city hall. We have a civic center and opera house. I want to invite all teachers to the front. They're the front lines. Same with the police are the front lines to our public safety, to our education. The teachers are the front lines, not the superintendent, not the principal. Invite the teachers. Listen to what they need. Listen to what they face in the classroom. If if listen to what they need funded. Take notes, take the data, and delegate, you know, 5 teachers from every school to come together to talk about what other teachers need and have a separate meeting with commission, with superintendents to formulate a plan of action. The commission's able to allocate those funds towards what the teacher needs, and the superintendents are able to supervise the implementation of these plans. Yeah, thank you.
How will you work to ensure that there are adequate resources and programs for the youth within your community?
Um, that is something that I'm learning as my son grows older. My wife's in a stay-at-home moms group, and they always complain there's nothing to do for kids outside of going to the park, etc., etc. So I think that a anonymous survey of parents or guardians, because not everyone has parents, and you know, um, anonymous survey of parents to find out what parents actually need to keep their kids entertained and not on the iPad or tablet. I mean, I'm old school. I believe that's rotting a lot of people's brains. So, you know, I think you have out of touch leadership. My wife goes to the park 3 times a day with our son. It only at 2 years old, he can communicate quite a bit, and yesterday coming home. I'm like, hey, you want to go to the park? No, 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 no. He
Done
said,
with the park.
two. I said, two what? He's like, two times park, two times. I said, let's go. No, no, no. Three, no, dada. No. I'm like, okay, so at 2 years old, you're tired of the park. Um, Me and my wife were in bed. So I think that, you know, there's quite a bit of out of touch leadership. So I myself would want to survey parents, is parents know what their kids need. Um, your child's unique to you. If you have children, my child's unique to me. Um, and I think you'd be able to see different perspectives and see a common trend on what we're missing as far as city, and you'll be able to make sure that that's implemented. And I think for teens, you need safe spaces. What just happened? I want to say 2 weeks ago, you guys reported on um, a big gathering at a gas station, um, and that was scary because that could easily turn into a mass shooting if someone wasn't able to hold and handle their emotions. I'm very grateful that the police responded quickly and effectively, but I think that's a cry for help.
Mm.
Um, I believe that talking to different age groups, you will find out what age group needs. So I'm somebody that's all for all for advocating for listening, planning, looking at the data, and implementation.
What will you do to promote lifelong learning opportunities and workforce development for all residents?
Um, Knocking doors, common thing that you hear is, especially from people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, that their children decided to grow up in. That's heartbreaking. I don't think that's a good reflection on us as a city. So I believe, you know, promoting lifelong learning opportunities could come in the form of apprenticeships. We currently do have quite a bit of apprenticeship programs in Dothan, and I believe that we could expand into more instead of just welding or wood shop or construction. I think you should give a tax break to any organization that's willing to take on an apprentice. Let's say, for example, there's a student here that wanted to be in communications in media. I believe that you guys should be able to have the right to hire them. Let's say you guys were to pay them $12 an hour.
We do have interns
You
here.
do?
Mhm.
And let's say this is an incentive to have more. So let's say you're paying $12 an hour. I think at least $3, at least 25% of their wage should come from the city with because it's I crunched the data from 35 to 70, the average person in Dothan pays $82,000 in tax. So I think that we understand every citizen that we lose, we're losing a potential $82,000 in revenue. I believe that apprenticeships should be expanded to all industries, and the city should fund at least 25% of that salary because in the long run, the city's going to recoup a lot more than that. It gives kids the choice to learn about different careers.
Mhm.
A lot of children nowadays have ADHD and they're all over the place. But I believe if you had someone that did an apprenticeship here for the summer and then uh, interested in, let's say, I don't know, sign repair, and then they go apprentice with sign repair, and then they're picking up skills along the way. They're learning how to communicate here. They're learning hands-on somewhere else, and once you combine all those skills, you have incredible entrepreneurs. It could be the next Jeff Bezos from Dothan. It could be the next Mark Zuckerberg from Dothan, and that's something that we should foster um, within our ranks here in Dothan.
How will you ensure that healthcare and social services are accessible to all residents in your district?
Currently, there's nothing that's city owned, which is a good thing, is the city can't own everything, and I'm fully aware of that. You have Wiregrass Hope, you have the Samaritan Clinic, which is with Love and Action Ministries, and we know that federal government's deciding to do Medicaid and Medicare cuts. Whether you agree on that or you don't agree on that, it's a different topic, but it's coming. I think that the city should go to those that offer health services that are subsidized, such as Samaritan's Clinic or Wiregrass Hope, and ask them if they've seen an uptick. In that uptick, is it those that are elderly, those that are of working age, or those that are young and vulnerable? And take that data and adjust the city's budget to make sure that those that are elderly and those that are young have access to healthcare. Now, those that are working age, I'll be old fashioned. If you've got two arms, two legs, two eyes, two ears, gotta go find you behind a job. So I think that, there's ways to tackle it. And it takes reaching out to organizations that do provide and finding out if there's been an uptick in those seeking services. And then definitely finding out what demographic of age that upticks from. Yeah.
What initiatives will you support to address mental health and addiction issues within your district?
Um, it's sad to say, in the last 3 weeks, we've had three suicides in Denver. That is a cry for help when it comes to mental health. Um, a lot of people might not agree with me, but the generation that we were raised in, and now that we're adults, totally different to the younger kids that are coming after. And it's different to our parents and grandparents' generation. Um, it's a horrible thing for somebody to think that their way out is to end their um I'm not gonna say their name, but the person there's one incident that happened, and I had a gut feel. And I've said this to my wife. I've never said it publicly. Um, there's not a Costco here. We have Sam's. And the young man was a greeter at Sam's. And I'm always somebody that's talkative, and I'm always somebody that's trying to uplift other people's days. And I used to ask him, Pink Floyd or Nirvana, Metallica or Linkin Park. And he'd always give me his answer. And what inspired me to ask these questions is he looked down one. Um, I wish I had done more than entering or leaving Walmart, asking those simple questions. Could have done. Could have invited him for a meal. Could have asked if he likes video games, or I could have dug out the old video game system and played video games. Too late. And it's happened three. I think we need something that is city funded, that is a place people can go. It's a safe place, and they can talk about their mental. They can, have a place to relax, place to unwind. I think you need to also involve the elderly. Bring them in. Hey, son, it's hard. You're gonna get through this. I'm here. Talk to me. Back in my day, this is how I got through. might not work exactly the same, but try this, try that. So I think it's the city's role to do something. It's happening in the city, and the city needs to curb what's some 3 incidents now that could spread into 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the city's role. We should demand more from leadership, and we take $200 million a year in revenue. Think percentage of that, even if it's 2%, should go towards mental health
Mhm.
and wellness.
Mhm.
Thank you.
How do you plan to work with other local government agencies to improve public health services?
Um, Sorry if I got off track with
That's
that.
okay.
It's that
It
that
means a
bothers
lot
me.
to you.
It
Yeah.
bothers me. It does. How do I plan to work with local government agencies to improve public health services? Listen, listen to what people need. Track, track, the incidents that, that are occurring. Analyze the data, and implement solutions that can be measured. That or that have measurable effects that are tied into every dollar that goes into the program. We're going to put XYZ amount of dollars into this, then each dollar should get this result. If it's not getting this result, then go back in, listen, track, analyze, draft a plan, and implement that plan. So, yes, ma'am.
What steps will you take to ensure that affordable housing is available for all residents in your district?
Um, I think financial literacy is something that should be taught. So if that's working with different credit unions or different banking institutions, have, let's say, a mortgage day. Teach people, hey, the type of mortgages that are out there, these are the requirements. Um, this is what you need to do to get a mortgage. This is how you need to budget. You know, and the lack of program knowledge is appalling. Um, Not many people are aware of this. And if you're looking to buy a house, there's a program called NACA. I don't know what it stands for, but it's zero down payment. It's the lowest interest rate next to the VA, and you don't have to be a veteran to qualify for it. And they also pay your closing costs. And I think the minimum credit score to be a part of that program, 560 or 580. So it's like a really good program. I stumbled across it because there's a business conference in Orlando, and the person had a really good flyer. But when I got there, it was a NACA representative. So it's a business conference on a government program for mortgages. So I wouldn't have found out about it if I didn't go there. And it's appalling that not many people know about it. They use a lot of their funds to keep their program going versus advertise their program. So I think financial literacy, understanding the programs that are available, and wanting a home, wanting to have pride in ownership. I mean, our generation cares to rent. Our generation cares to lease. I think home ownership in Dothan's 57 or 59%. Um, Curious to see what it was in 1960 or 1970. I think it's instilling the want of ownership in meaningful assets, such as a home, versus a car or, I don't know, a vacation, you know?
Mhm.
So I think financial literacy and working with financial institutions, and I think financial institutions will be more than willing because they thrive on mortgages,
Mhm.
you know? So yeah.
How do you plan to address homelessness in the district, and what role will local government play in providing solutions?
Ooh, I think that can be tackled with cooperation between faith based institutions as well as the city. So I'm curious to see if there's any federal grants out there that turn parts of faith based buildings into apartments for the home. Um, in my neighborhood, you have Cloverdale Baptist Church and Cloverdale Methodist Church, all within 100 feet, or not 100, about Baptist Church about 300 feet from my house, and the Methodist Church about 100 feet.
Mhm.
I've attended the Methodist Church. I've been trying to get on the books to attend the Baptist Church, but no one's called me back yet. So if you're watching, I'd love to talk to you guys. Um, there's 30 members at that church, and one of the members I invited to dinner, and we talked about things that could happen in the community. And I said I've noticed a lot of older churches that are quietly fading away, and I said, I think that the churches that are losing congregations should turn them into arcs,
Mhm.
beacons of hope. So, yes, still have your congregation hall and your meeting rooms, but a church of that size, part of it can be transformed into a housing unit for the homeless. You could teach them hands-on jobs. You can not only teach them hands-on jobs, you can teach them responsibility. You can teach um, great adulting, budgeting, and when they have that job, garnish a bit of the wage, pay that building, that house, that the apartment that they're living in. It teaches them budgeting rent. And when they're ready to leave that nest, they're free as a bird with the tools they need to succeed. So I'm very curious if there are federal grants or federal funds could fund something like that. Because as you drive around Dothan, it's not just unique to Cloverdale Methodist. There's a ton of churches that have closed down or have congregations of 10 or 20 people that could be used to help the homeless. And from my understanding of the Bible, one of the most important commandments is love thy neighbor. What tell me a better way to introduce someone to Christ as well as loving thy neighbor than, creating a subsection of a church that teaches great adulting life skills and it's done by the church. Who's to say that 5, 10 years down the line, that person's not the manager of some big company and then goes and reopens it? See what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so that's some way that I would address the homelessness in the city.
What initiatives will you support to help families and individuals achieve long term housing stability?
I think that as we drive around Dothan, see a lot of derelict to rundown houses. Um, and we continuously build more, but that's our culture. As Americans, something breaks, throw it away, and start over. We don't try to repair or fix. I think we should look into rehab grants. Um, there's quite a bit of individuals that go to trade school that are students. I'd love to see those students take on a project of a house that's been abandoned that the city might own, and they might put in new floors, new windows, paint, get it up to par, and then do a pilot program of someone that rents it, and part of the rent's going towards a mortgage or down payment for a mortgage. And when they hit, let's say, a 3, 4 year mark, that percentage that's going towards a down payment now translates into a down payment, and they get funding through like an all in or a 5-star credit union. And then you rinse and repeat. The students that are learning construction and, you know, being an electrician or a plumber over at Wallace, they get hands on skills and it fosters community. It fosters um, pride in the community and creates opportunities for families to get on the property ladder. Um, I think about that and think to myself, that ran for 3 or 4 years. You're gonna have those shining stars that graduate as a plumber, HVAC, electrician, carpenter, painter, welder. You're gonna have shining stars that come together 5, 6 years after start one of the best construction companies that Wiregrass has ever seen. So that's the stuff I daydream. Yeah,
How do you plan to ensure that your policies promote inclusivity and address systematic inequalities in our district? I'm sorry, in District 3 in your district.
in District 3. Um, Start with the data. It doesn't lie. Analyze the data, identify those who are most impacted. Sometimes you might think that, like, I've heard it all during 2024 election. A lot of people um, from all across different walks of life thought they were the most impacted. Um, a lot of people in my community think they're the most impacted. You have to look at the data. I believe women are the most impacted. We've had that private conversation before. So I think you have to look at the data, and the data will show who's impacted the most. You know, um, Include those individuals that are affected in the solution and in the conversations of what can be done to create a solution. Right now, it's a lot of teens that are committing these crimes as far as shootings go. Include them in the conversation. I'm 34 years old. To somebody that's my nephew that's 14, I'm an old man. I'm an old man. So I'm not going to have the same world perspective that, a 14-year-old's going to have. I can have guidance. I can give, I can be a moral compass. I can give advice, but I can't see the world through a 14-year-old's eyes. So I think that, including those groups that the data says is most affected, um, can find solution. Discourse and dialogue. We used to be a nation that had positive discourse and agreed to disagree. I think that's important. Um, on the campaign trail, I've met people that I disagree with. I've met people I agree with. But we've been polite, we've been professional, we've shared meals, and we all come to the understanding that um, things that we might disagree on are minute. Things we agree on is crime, economic opportunity. You know, um, Getting kids off the phones and bringing more, having more father filled households versus fatherless households. So I think looking at the data and tackling those that are most affected first and including those groups, whatever the problem is, will create to meaningful solution because where we're headed is not a good direction. And I believe that conversations around our problem with constituents, with community leaders, with police officers, teachers, or doctors, whatever, will create opportunities of improvement.
What measures will you take to ensure equal access to government services for all community members within your district?
That's a very good question. I believe that that's something the city currently does incredibly well. Um, Regardless of race, regardless of income level, regardless of gender or age, the leisure services is open to all. There's something to do outside in every district. One, two, three. You have In my district, you have James Oates Park, beautiful park, well kept up, well cleaned. Um, even have EV electric car charging station. Um, Same with Westgate Park. Um, Same with Rip Stadium. So I think that that's something that the city does incredibly well is to make sure that services are accessible regardless of race, regardless of income, regardless of gender. So give the city an A plus plus on that.
How do you plan to ensure transparency in your decision making and in all allocations of resources?
So transparency and ensuring allocation of city resources. You let the people decide. Um, the public servant hear voice hear them hear students voice their concerns. I go to City Hall, voice their concerns prior to going to City Hall and voicing their concerns, write plans of action, present those plans of actions, um, negotiate with other commissioners, see how those plans of action work with their district and constituents, and then go back to my constituents to see if the new updated plan works with them. Going back to my constituents will be a town hall. Problem is, how it currently works is the incumbents don't go back to their constituents with a revised plan. But quite a bit of incumbents don't even have initiatives themselves. I'm a candidate and I'm running with multiple initiatives, taking time, my energy, sat down, talked to people, wrote out their problems, and documented it. I think it's quite embarrassing for any incumbent to not have, at minimum, the same amount as initiatives as me. I'm not being paid for this. I want to do this. I do care what happens in my district, my neighborhood, to the people I call a neighbor. And I think accountability, as far as it comes to the allocation of resources, is progress reports. I think City of Dothan, when you go and see the district pages, or the website, when you see different districts, shows your map, shows your commissioner, has their phone number. I think you should add progress report. Progress report that someone can go in same way that they go to vote with their name, their first name, last name, their date of birth. They can make an account in public safety, roads and infrastructure, education, health, small business, etc., etc. You get to go in and vote, and it stays on there. Like if you go to a restaurant, and you have health, the food and health report, it stays on there. So when you go and see, oh, District 2 has a B minus. Oh, District 3 has a A plus. Oh, District 4's got a C. Or District, it's a good reflection and it puts fire to the feet of elected officials because at that point in time, you can't hide how your constituents feel. If I had a C minus, then best believe my schedule for the month's getting cleared, and every Saturday we're hosting a town hall to get us back up to an A plus. So I think that's something that's very important.
How will you handle conflicts of interest and ensure ethical conduct in your position?
I have again an agreement for that. Ethical and conflicts of interest. My accountability and confidence pledge, which is my pledge that when you hit 200 petition signatures, and I believe there's 11,000 inhabitants in my district, 200 sign a petition to host a vote, surprise vote of confidence. If I receive 51% or more, that people do not have confidence in me, I vacate my seat then and there. So I think that this should be a template for other commissioners to model and make yourself accountable. Accountability. You're a public servant,
Right.
you know?
Why are you running for District 3 Commissioner and what motivates you to serve in this capacity?
Um, there's a long story as to why I'm running. Um, but to summarize it, for a moment, I lost faith in City of Dothan. And during losing faith in City of Dothan, me and my wife attempted to sell our house. Our housing market in our zip code, um, one of the most saturated markets. We have the most homes for sale in Dothan, which is a poor reflection on our district. The lowest number of homes for sale, I believe, is 36305. We're in 36301. If there's a ton of houses for sale, it's a reflection on what's going on in our district. People are trying to jump ship. So after listing under appraisal value and it's still not selling, my wife sat me down and said, it's not time to run away. She said, God does everything for me. She's like, you are very analytical, put together some plans that, can improve the district. Why not run for commission? And she mentioned somebody at church that always said, if there's not a community there, you have to build your own. Because Christ taught about community building. And the person at church, I don't want to say their name, but um, I'll say that they go to church. Um, it dwelled on me and it bothered me for a long time. I decided to put my name in the ring. Um, and I decided to talk to people. I decided to listen. And I realized that a lot of things I thought needed to be changed, I wasn't alone on. Um, I realized that I had blind spots. Um, and I was able to realize what my blind spots were. I was able to hear other people's opinions and their concerns. And very glad that between the person at church, that our house didn't sell.
What experiences or accomplishments have best prepared you for this role?
The best experiences and accomplishments that prepared me for a role of commissioner, I was a military brat. Um, I was raised all across America. I got to see different people, different walks of life, different demographics. My punishment as a kid, father's old school. I used to get a pow pow. But when that didn't work, um, he used to make me go to the NCO's club, which on base and it's non-commissioned officers. And there's still a lot of World War II veterans alive, and there's Vietnam veterans. So for my punishment, I'd have to go sit with them, and I'd have to write a full paper on their life's experience. In that moment, as I got older, I asked him why that was my punishment. He said, you've seen multiple perspectives from multiple different people from multiple different walks of life. You're able to communicate with them and understand them. You might not agree, but the world needs more understanding. So I think that qualifies me just on the basis that I understand different. I can communicate with different. Um, as far as business, I built my own business. I built a business and sold a business prior to being 30. That business had millions in revenue. It was sold to a bigger organization. Um, I've gone to college for accounting. I've gone to college for business administration. I've gone to college for IT. I used to work in media. I used to work for Vice Magazine. That helped me with communication skills and in understanding the difference between fake news and real news. And it's in media, you have something called journalistic integrity, which not a lot of organizations that are mainstream care about anymore. You guys do. And I really appreciate that for somebody that started his career in media. Um, being a father qualifies me. Being a husband qualifies. We said privately, I believe that, women have it the toughest now. It took knocking the doors of elderly women, younger women, and hearing their perspective to understand what it's like to be a woman. And I think it just takes compassion. It takes compassion to wanting to see a brighter tomorrow for your kids, for your neighbors. And it takes empathy. I think all those combined in me make me someone that is ready for this position, is ready to be a public servant, is ready to be accountable to the people that I call neighbor, my constituents. Um, Again, I'm the only person that's willing to sign an agreement stating that, guys, if I do something wrong, you can get rid of me, fire me, fire me. I'm happy to give up that position. I'd love to see every candidate and every incumbent sign that. If they're not willing to sign it, it's a reflection on them because we're supposed to be servants. So
How do you plan to handle the challenges and responsibilities that come with this position?
I plan to be level-headed at the same time, non-wavering when it comes to truth. If someone's saying something that's untruthful or doing something that they know is detrimental to the public, then I'm unwavering on it. I'm an anchor in the sand. When it comes to something that potentially could benefit their district and maybe my district might get the crumbs from that, I'm willing to write down what the crumbs are and go tell my constituents, hey, this project, we're getting crumbs. But I'm going to take this person's word that, next budgetary meeting, we're going to present this and they're going to back this so we get a bigger piece of the pie. I'm willing to be transparent. I'm not going to sit there and know that 5 commissioners are going to give District 3 crumbs and say, hey, it's not crumbs, it's a big slice. It's lying. It's wrong. I'm willing to balance what we want as a district with what our neighboring district, District 2, wants and needs. And I'm willing to work together so that both districts can see positive change and positive impact, and we can build opportunity and grow positively together in the right direction. So that pretty much summarizes. Before we end this interview, off record, I was told, I don't know how credible the source is, and I'll say that because I don't believe in misinformation. Off record, I was told that the city potentially could raise our tax rate. I've made another document that is a pledge for zero tax on grocery. If you drive 30 minutes to Florida, is no tax on. I don't know how you can sit and feel comfortable taxing all walks of life on the food that they consume. We as a country founded over a tax on tea. We're now being taxed on groceries, and we have been taxed on groceries. So I challenge every incumbent, I challenge every candidate to sign stating when they're elected, 12 months, they'll figure out how to balance a budget to get rid of taxes on groceries. And that's the stuff I believe in because it helps all, it fosters a break for all. So I appreciate this interview. And I'll leave these with you.
Oh, please do. Thank you so much for coming by, Kyle, and good luck on your election and campaign.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.